And myself and my colleague, Professor Miranda Ashworth, who just stepped out for a moment, we are the two that had started the Village Square. It was formerly called the Summer Heat Series from last summer, in which we discussed controversial topics in political science. That has since evolved into what is known as the Village Square through the Department of Political Science, and we have been regularly holding these events since the fall of 2022. So with that said, I'd like to take a few moments to thank a couple of individuals who have been instrumental in helping us have these discussions. So first, the President, Dr. Valerie Jones, and her administration. They have been supportive of every event we have held, as well as our Division Dean, Dr. Faye Lee for Division 3, and her staff, specifically Nadia, Sierra, Christina, and of course, Josh Estrada, who I think just stepped out of the room, who handles all of our technological needs and assists us with every event that we have. We have multiple professors in the audience who have been supportive, as well as Captain Timniak through campus security. So just a few housekeeping issues. Unfortunately, we do not have the QR code for students to scan for their attendance, but there are sign-in sheets at the back table near the refreshments. So please make sure if you are here on behalf of a class or a professor that you sign in either as you walked in or if you didn't at the end of the event, so your attendance is recorded. In addition, this event is being recorded today. So we are obligated to let you know that the event is being recorded. It basically focuses on the panelists and not on the audience, but your image may be captured in a recording. There are various flyers on the back table that you may be interested in on your way out. One of them discusses the Introduction to Political Science course that will be offered in the fall, and it will give you a course description as to what that course is about. There is also a reading list that has been put together by the library related to today's event on cryptocurrency. So if you are interested, you can grab some of the flyers in the back. I would like to take a brief moment to introduce Brian, who is the president of the Political Science Club, to come to the stage to talk briefly about the club, and I believe there is a flyer related to the club on the back table as well.
Thank you, Professor Green. All right, everybody, thank you for showing up today. As you all know, I am the president of the Political Science Club, Brian Dennis. Just want to take a moment to give you all an opportunity to hear about the club and what we do. So obviously, if you're here, you are wildly interested in discussions such as these. And if you are wanting to take that further, I highly recommend you join the club. We have conversations like these all the time, maybe not about recession or cryptocurrency, but about current events and political topics going on in the world. We do have our last meeting on Monday, April 17th, in Casa 216 from 2 to 3 p.m. So if you can make it great, we'll be having officer elections for all positions, for our fall positions. And we will also be setting meeting time so that way we have a solid schedule for next fall. That's it. Thank you.
You can also reach out to the Department of Political Science if you are interested in becoming a member of the Political Science Club. Any of the faculty members in the department can assist you with that. I would also like to take a moment to introduce Marlene from the League of Women Voters, who's going to speak to us for just a few minutes about what's going on in the state legislature in Austin, Texas.
I also want to remind everyone that we do have a May election. The May elections are local elections. They're either your school board in Katy. The Cypress School Board election will be in November. But the municipal utility districts, several of them have bond issues for millions of dollars. There are also emergency service district elections. And then there's Jersey Village City Council and mayoral. So if you are in a city limits of some sort, you will have those local elections. But bringing that up, I also want to remind everybody here, we have a table out here that if you are not a registered voter, and if you are 17 years and 10 months, we can register you to vote. But the other point is that if you register today, if you have missed the deadline to vote in the May election, but you will then be able to vote in the fall elections, unless there is a runoff in the May elections. So we never know what's going to happen in the city elections, but we are there to do, if you have a change of address, we can do those things also. Something that's going on in the legislature right now, there's a lot of discussion. We do have $44 billion in surplus. But they are trying, when you listen to the discussions, there's a lot of discussions about, well, we can't spend it all because there could be a famine coming. So, and it's coming. Okay, that's what we're here for. But I want you to understand that there's a lot of discussion about school districts and whether we go with vouchers or whether we fund public education. But the point is that the funding mechanism for your school districts have not been, the formula has not been updated since 2019. And the requirements are unfunded mandates for safety, security, and a number of other things that most of your school districts are running $100 million in deficit per year. It is not a sustainable issue. So it's something that when you hear school funding, it's got to be a priority, okay? The other issue is diversity, equity, and inclusion. Those bills that prohibit it on college campuses have passed the Senate. The best I can recommend is focus your communications on your House members. And if you are silent, they take that you agree with what's happening. Just remember, your silence is that you agree. So if you don't always agree, you need to communicate that issue. Tenure is also is at the university level maybe outlawed. And that is something else that's worrisome. It will impact the quality of our university professors that are doing research, which is important. There's 10 bills, Senate Bill 18 and House Bill 5127. The election bills are still alive and not doing well, but there's bills to eliminate voting centers in the state of Texas. And there's a bill to eliminate a voting poll location on a college campus. Those are the things you really can't ignore. So I'm trying to encourage you to please contact your elected officials and let them know. And if you do not know what the bill number is, that's fine. You can tell them the issue that you're concerned with. But in the next 6 weeks, it is a done deal. So you have 6 weeks to communicate your issues. Okay, so I don't know how to make it more imperative that we need to communicate. If you have any questions, I'll be out at the table. Okay?
Thank you. I just want to take a step back for one moment because the individuals I had introduced earlier who had stepped out of the room have now stepped back into the room. So we have our Division Dean, Dr. Fay Lee, who is over Division 3 and in charge of the Political Science Department, who has been instrumental in supporting every event that we have held as a department. Then Professor Ashworth, who I had introduced earlier, has stepped back into the room. She is now back there, and she and I work hand in hand to make these events possible. And once again, Josh stepped in and stepped back out. So with that said, I would like to introduce our 3 panelists today. Starting from my furthest to my left is Professor Nick Guerra, who started his educational career by becoming a college instructor teaching business, law, and political science courses. Prior to his educational career, Professor Guerra worked in finance for various financial institutions and previously worked in Washington, D.C. politics for congressional leadership and state government leaders. Along with working at Lone Star College, Professor Guerra is completing his doctoral degree at the University of Texas at Austin in the class of 2023. So congratulations. His dissertation focuses on community college fundraising for workforce and economic development purposes. In terms of his education, Professor Guerra attained his law degree from the University of Pittsburgh, a Master's of Business Administration from the University of Florida, an MS, a Master's degree in Public Policy and Management from Carnegie Mellon University, and a Bachelor of Arts from University of Washington. Overall, Professor Guerra is very passionate about student success and firmly believes that in the development of student success inside and outside of the classrooms. So our next panelist is Professor Janu Abraham, who started at Lone Star College Site Fair in the spring of 2018. He is a recent transplant to Texas as he originally hails from New York. He received a Bachelor of Arts in History and Political Science from Binghamton University and a Master's and a PhD in Political Science from the Graduate Center at the City University of New York. His specialties are comparative politics and international relations. His research focuses on agricultural recovery and post-Civil War settings. He has taught undergraduate courses for a number of years at a variety of community, public, and private colleges in the greater New York City area, as well as here at Lone Star College. He teaches American government, American foreign policy, civil wars in the developing world, comparative political analysis, politics of the Middle East, globalization, and introduction to international relations while in New York. At Lone Star College, he teaches Texas government and federal government courses, as well as the honors courses, and aims to create an interactive environment where students engage with the course material through class discussions, oral presentations, and an emphasis on writing to persuade an audience. Our third panelist, who I have had the privilege of knowing for 17 years, he and I were hired together, is Professor Sean Miller, who is the chair of accounting in the economics department here at Lone Star. He brings with him over 20 years of teaching experience in accounting and finance. He is a certified public accountant, certified financial manager, certified managerial accountant, and has a Doctor of Business Administration degree in accounting. He is the author of a book, which I actually just received, How to Win at the Game of Finances, and is the recipient of the Texas Society of Certified Public Accountants Outstanding Educator of the Year Award. So these are our three panelists, and I will turn it over to them.
So I'm going first. Thank you again for coming here, and hopefully this will be an insightful forum where we'll ask questions. And I'm going to start with the overview. So that's kind of where we're going to begin. And if you go to that first slide, there's three types of digital currency that we're going to kind of talk about. And the first one is cryptocurrency. Second one is electronic payment systems, and the third one is central bank digital currency. So those are the three topics that I'm going to kind of give you an overview for. What is cryptocurrency? I know we heard the topic, and some of you know what that is. Others may not. And so crypto, you think of that word at the beginning of crypto, is basically just something that's secure, and we're securing data. In this instance, it's for currency. It's being encrypted and decrypted as it's being transmitted in order to keep it private as we send it across the internet. And so cryptocurrency really began in 2009 with Bitcoin. And the thing about Bitcoin is it's got a lot of, I guess, it's got a great backstory, it's really the best way to describe it. You know, the guy who started it is Satoshi Nakamoto, and the thing about this is that we don't really know who that is. You know, we know the name, it could be the person's real name, it could be a pseudonym, we really don't know. We know it's a Japanese name, but, you know, again, we don't know who this person is. There's been a lot of speculation about it, a lot of theories. I mean, everyone from Elon Musk to all kinds of different names have been thrown out there, but we don't know who the person is. The person who wrote the code, they handed it off to somebody else, and they disappeared. And so we don't know, and this person hasn't come forward to say, yes, I am this person. And so that started back in 2009, and that's really, we'll see the kind of beginning of this whole cryptocurrency. And the other thing about this is there's some interesting terminology. And so you'll hear these words thrown out like blockchain. And so there's some new words that are associated with this cryptocurrency. Blockchain really is just the way that you account for the transaction. So I teach accounting, and in my class, we talk about journal entries. This is like the journal entries for cryptocurrency. They call it a block because we put a group of them together. And so you put a group of transactions together, you tie a ribbon around it, and call that a block of transactions. And so and then you put several blocks together, that's a chain. So we got a blockchain, just a group of transactions. And so that's all that's happening there. And it says it's a distributed ledger for recording transactions. All that means is not one computer is running all these transactions. There's lots of computers that are doing this. And so there's no way to just take out the software by just taking out one server. It's distributed across multiple countries around the world, and different groups are working on maintaining the accounting. And it's being duplicated. So not one computer has that one transaction, multiple computers have the same transactions. And so that's how we get this blockchain. And then you might have heard the term mining, and that sounds like kind of an interesting term, but basically the people that are recording these transactions are getting paid to do it. So if you have a computer and you're recording transactions, eventually you get paid in the currency. It could be Bitcoin or whatever the currency is. And so you're mining in the sense that you're getting paid for recording transactions. So it sounds a lot more interesting than mining, you know, because they are giving you a new coin that hasn't been used before. It's really why it's like money. And then exchanges, that's where you buy and sell crypto, you know. And so it's kind of like the New York Stock Exchange where people trade stocks, and it's the same concept. You go to an exchange if you want to buy and sell crypto. And so those are some of the big definitions related to crypto. If you go to the next slide, you'll see some of the advantages of it. You know, it is decentralized, like I mentioned. So that means, you know, not one computer is running the software for this. It does allow peer-to-peer transfer, so you can send crypto to, you know, directly to someone else without being in a bank involved. It is fast, you know, transactions are recorded quickly, and it can increase in value. As you'll see in a minute, crypto is very volatile. Sometimes the price could swing quite a bit. Sometimes you can make money off of it. If you'll see our next slide, it'll show you the biggest currencies that are out there. So Bitcoin is by far the biggest. And you know, you can see it's $30,000 for one coin. Now remember, this electronic currency, I remember when I was teaching a personal finance class and people first started asking me about Bitcoin. Back then it was $2,000 for one coin. So it's gone up, and it's been even higher than 30,000. And you know, it fluctuates, and no one really knows what the future is for each of these different currencies. And so that's why there is so much volatility. You can see the market capitalization is $584 billion. What does that mean? That means if you want to buy all the crypto, all the Bitcoins, you need $584 billion to do that. So there's a lot of currency out there for the Bitcoin. I've listed some of the other ones on there. Ethereum is the next biggest, $230 billion market cap. It's a little bit different than Bitcoin in that it has the option for smart contracts, which that might be the future for, like, let's say you buy and sell a piece of land. You know, when one person sells it, another person is buying it, and then you can create a chain where you always know who has ownership of what item. So that might be, you know, a future use for things like that. And then tether, the word tether, you know, it's tied to the dollar. That's why it's $1 per coin. That's got $80 billion market cap. And there's some others that are on there. There's actually thousands of them that are out there, okay? And so, you know, these are the big ones, and it's, you know, it's kind of the Wild West for currency. And this is, we're not sure where this is gonna end up, but this is kind of where we're at right now in terms of, I mean, a lot of some other countries have been trying to come up with some as well, but those are the big ones. The second category is electronic payment systems. And so this is not cryptocurrency, but this is a way for you to buy things electronically. And you can, you know, you can see some of the names up there. You've probably used some of these before, like Venmo, Cash App. It's a way for you to buy and sell things electronically. Zelle is a popular one that was put together by some banks. And that's, and then, you know, Apple Pay, PayPal. FedNow is the newest one. It's going to come out in July. And that one is put together by the federal government for electronic payments. So it's not crypto, but it's a way to buy and sell things using electronic systems. And then the third category is central bank digital currencies. And CBDC is the acronym for that. This is basically, think of it like cryptocurrency, but it's government backed. It's kind of the best way to describe it. And so there's a central bank that's over this. Because it's backed by the government, you know, they have a lot more say of what can happen with that currency. You know, there's a possibility where they cannot, you know, maybe they won't charge a fee because, you know, they can tax the item instead. No internet connection is needed, so you can make a transaction using near-field communication, which, you know, basically your phone, or you have a card that has a chip in it. You can buy and sell things that way. This one is kind of like the frontier. There are a few countries that are kind of trying to initiate this. Well, I know some of the panelists will talk about China, the digital yuan, that sort of thing, but the US has not done anything this way yet. They talked about the digital dollar. The one that I was showing you earlier, those cryptocurrencies are not, the tether, that's not run by the government. So there's nothing by the US yet in this area, but that might be something in the future that will come along. So the next screen is the benefits, and so there are some benefits to this. You know, by a central bank controlling crypto, it can be regulated. They can control the money supply very easily that way. They can, you know, extend credit if they need to. So there are some benefits. There are some concerns that some people have. Privacy issues. You know, the ability for the government to kind of see what people are buying and selling. And, you know, especially think about if you're buying something overseas. Well, now we have cross-border transactions, and, you know, some people are concerned about, hey, I don't want this other country seeing my transactions. Potential abuse of power, you know, potential for a government to regulate what people can buy or put limits on what you can buy. There's some concerns around that. And then expiration of currency. And so I know China has talked about maybe, hey, what if we made this currency expire? You know, instead of an routine money, maybe you just, the money expires after a certain amount of time, or if we want to stimulate the economy, we can put expiration date on money. And so that's something that has concern for some people. And so those are our 3 topics that we're going to kind of overview, talk about, and so I'll turn it over to our next panelist.
So, okay, so what I'm going to talk about, kind of picking up where Professor Miller left off here, talking about the cryptocurrency at the local level here in Texas, but then uses of this technology internationally. So in Texas, Texas has tried to position itself to be the new headquarters for cryptocurrency. One of the reasons for that is China put a full stop on Bitcoin mining in China because they wanted more control over that whole industry. And so a lot of the Bitcoin mining companies were looking for some new place to set up shop, and they found that Texas was a very friendly environment for them for multiple reasons. So when it comes to Texas, there is a major lobbying firm in Texas called the Blockchain Council, the Texas Blockchain Council. It's grown to over 70 members. They have it started off, it was going to be a one-off event. It was going to be called the Texas Blockchain Summit. It started off in 2021, but now it's a yearly event where politicians, big business leaders, they all speak at it. And they try to write regulations, write laws that make a more crypto-friendly environment here in Texas. In 2021, Senator Ted Cruz of Texas, Senator John Cornyn of Texas, Cynthia Loomis of West Virginia, another senator, they all spoke at that event. This is now a year later. The Blockchain Lobbying Council has numerous meetings with Governor Abbott. Governor Abbott talked many times about how he wanted Texas to be a headquarters for crypto, and in his own personal addresses, he talked about how proud he was that in many HEB kiosks you could buy Bitcoin, for instance. So this is something that we're seeing stateside. In terms of why Texas is such a friendly, or why it's such a sought after place to set up shop if you're a Bitcoin company. Bitcoin mining, as was already mentioned, it is very energy intensive. It requires, ideally, if you want to keep your costs low, you need cheap energy, right? You need cheap electricity, you need a friendly regulatory environment. One thing that's going on as well, in Texas, in Texas, what we have very cheap, or we have electricity companies competing with each other for the lowest prices. That's something that a lot of these Bitcoin companies here that are setting up shop here find very attractive. We have, once again, a very friendly regulatory environment, but we also have a growing renewable energy profile. So 20% now of our energy in Texas comes from renewables like solar and wind. And one of the big criticisms of Bitcoin and other types of cryptocurrency was the amount of energy that was needed just to produce a very small number of Bitcoins. I'm gonna go back to the slide in a moment, but just talking about energy consumption. If Bitcoin was a country, it would be the 27th most energy demanding nation on the planet. So the amount of energy that's needed. On the bottom left there, that's an image of a server farm in the Middle East. I believe it's in Iran. In order to mine crypto, you need multiple graphics cards hooked up together, running 24/7 to mine this particular currency. It's a tremendous amount of cost in terms of electricity, but also food. And so that's where a lot of money, the cost comes from. And so you see on the right there, Bitcoin devours more electricity than many countries. Here, going back a bit, crypto mines in Texas. So I'm sorry the maps are a little bit small, but it's here, what a lot of these companies are doing is that they're trying to find places where there's a lot of land available, where land is very cheap, where they can set up shop very cheaply. And we talked already about energy prices. A Canadian company called Argo Blockchain, they have a 320-acre facility in Dickens County, which is that red square right there, near the Texas Panhandle. The population of the entire county is about 2,000 people. Right? So they have a lot of land to operate on. An American company called Riot Blockchain, Milo County, which is shaded in light blue over there on that map. The whole county's population is about 25,000, but they've bought to a 100-acre facility, and they're going to gradually expand. So this is what's going on here in Texas. And one thing to keep in mind when it comes to Bitcoin currently, at the core of it, Bitcoin and a lot of these these currencies are rather speculative. Right? You're not going to go to you're not going to go to Domino's and get pizza with Bitcoin. You're not going to do your daily routine of you spending Bitcoin. So what we see a great deal of, and there's been a great deal of backlash to this in Texas, where we already have an energy grid that is stressed or near the breaking point, especially during the cold weather. And do we want to divert more energy from an already fragile grid to these currencies that are largely speculative, that don't have a great deal of application? So at the moment, and I'm contrasting this with what we see elsewhere and what we see in terms of these technologies around the world. So here in the United States, Bitcoin is largely speculative, and the other currencies and other cryptocurrencies are largely speculative. You cannot really use them like currencies. Oftentimes people buy these currencies hoping that they go up in value and then they sell for the increase in profit. Now, what we're seeing elsewhere though are two things. We're seeing these technologies used for universal payment systems, like already mentioned, but also digital currencies that are backed by state governments. So here, just to introduce this section, I have this slide called technological leapfrogging. On the left-hand side there, that's an image of mobile phone adoption in India. And it started out in the early 2000s, or like in the early 2000s, maybe 250 million people had mobile phones. Now it's well over 1 billion. And you can see here on the right-hand side, mobile internet traffic as a percentage of total web traffic. This is a few years old now, January 2018. And you can see here, when it comes to access to the internet in most countries, right, the overwhelming majority of web traffic is coming from smartphones. A lot of times in the United States, people have multiple devices, tablets, laptops, all of that. But in many of these countries, developing countries, they do almost everything through their smartphones. Now, why I'm bringing this up is because in many of these developing countries, and I'm using India and China in particular, but I know you could have used many countries in Southeast Asia or Sub-Saharan Africa as well. Many of these countries are operating where there's often a lack of state capacity, lack of government capacity, lots of bureaucratic hurdles, very high cost for some of these services. In India and Sub-Saharan Africa, landlines, in order to get a landline phone in the late 80s or early 90s, you would have be on maybe a 6-month waiting list. It was really up in the air where the government could get to you. And so what ended up happening was that mobile phones became the cheaper, quicker option for people. And that's what people did. So there was no phase in many of these countries where you switched over from a landline phone to a mobile phone. The same thing is happening with cryptocurrency, where people are going over and switching over from traditional credit card companies and banks and going straight to these types of applications for money transfers. Now, what we see in India is something called the universal payment system, or the abbreviation is UPI. It's an open platform, it's interoperable, and so it is among many different payment systems. So the transaction here occurs through mobile wallets and payment applications. This is, in a sense, very similar to an open source software. It's a payment system. It's something that other applications can build upon. So you have UPI in India, but this is something that is now used in Australia, in the European Union, much of Southeast Asia, where it is operable across many different countries. A little bit more detail about the UPI. So real-time payment system, funds are credited instantly. It allows users to link multiple bank accounts to a single smartphone app, and they are able to make transfers without an account number or without, let's say, the official code from the Indian State Bank. Operated through a mobile wallet linked to your smartphone, or you can have, let's say, a variety of web applications. Let's say an Amazon India app on your phone, and you can just pay with that. Leapfrogs Indian banks in terms of convenience and credit card companies in terms of cost. So what we have is, once again, if you're trying to send money to a relative with your traditional Indian bank, you may be on a very long waiting list. There may be excessive fees involved. It's often a lot of bureaucratic hoops you have to jump through. If you're trying to transfer money to a relative through, let's say, Visa or MasterCard, usually their transaction fees might be 3 to 5% of your transfer. That's going to eat up a lot of your funds. So they kind of leapfrog, the universal payment system tries to leapfrog both of those in terms of convenience and costs. Lastly, what I was going to talk about here, another thing that we're seeing, this is China, the DigiYuan, a central bank digital currency equivalent to the yuan in China. Payments are not routed through a bank. There are no transaction fees. It's a pilot program that began in Fujian province, which is very close to Taiwan, but now has expanded to, I think, 4 different provinces. There's something like 270 million people are now using this. That's maybe about 10%, 15% of the population of China, but still that's a very significant number. India and Brazil are planning to introduce their own central bank currencies by 2024. This is something we're going to continue to see. The DigiYuan, Alipay and WeChat are mobile payment systems, much like UPI in India, but they're tied to private enterprise. Alipay is tied to Alibaba, so some of you may have heard of that company. Kind of like Amazon, eBay, Google, all rolled into one. WeChat is tied to Tencent. This is a mobile gaming powerhouse in China. Mobile payment systems already in wide circulation. The Chinese government is taking a wide variety of means to encourage the use of the digital yuan, because one thing that Alipay and WeChat Pay, one thing that the Chinese government has mentioned is that oftentimes, yes, they have access to your digital funds, but that they also have access to your social media profile. So those two things are linked. So they're trying to have people switch over to the digital one. Of course, with this, worries about increasing Chinese government control and surveillance of citizens through that digital one. So criticism of the Chinese government could eventually lead to you losing your ability to pay digitally. China today is an increasingly cashless society, so stripping people of their ability to use the DigiYuan or similar mobile payment system takes away their ability to bank in general. So something to look out for. And so I'm going to pass it over to Nick. Thanks.
Cool. So I'll go a little bit quicker for the sake of time to give you guys some discussion time. But right now, if you guys wanted to sign up for a crypto exchange account versus like a stock account, let's say you went with a stock account like Fidelity, you would have to do what's called KYC. It's called Know Your Customer. You would type in your social security number, you type in where you live, you answer a lot of regulatory questions, and they'll do a quick background check and open your account. Crypto, some of them do require that, like Coinbase and I believe Kraken, but then there's some exchanges like KuCoin, you can sign up with whatever you want, whatever random telephone number you want, and you can start, cracking into action. Coming to what Professor Miller was talking about, Satoshi Nakamoto was the name that of the person allegedly that created it, but some people even said it's a nation that created it. Some people accused the CIA of creating it. Some people even say Satoshi Nakamoto was a combination of Samsung, Toshiba, Nokia, and Motorola. That name combined created it. So I don't know who created it, but what the problem that has come from it is regulatory stuff. So Professor Abraham was just talking about India and China quite a bit. India, I think about 6 months ago to a year ago, was on the brinks of banning cryptocurrency. But then they said, why should we ban it? Because they can't. Even if they try to, people are going to work under VPNs and God knows what else to get cryptocurrency going. So India said, okay, we're not going to ban it, but we're going to tax the crap out of it. And they're looking at close to 40% taxes, at least 30% taxes. And the US is still trying to figure this whole system out too, because those who want to fly under the night under crypto, it's really hard to track. So long story short, the US is having the crypto regulation war within itself, like a civil war. The CIA has their opinions about what needs to be done. The FBI has their opinions about what needs to be done. But the two leading sources are the SEC, the Security Exchange Commission, and the CFTC, which is the Commodities and Futures Trade Commission, about who regulates crypto. Well, before they can decide who regulates crypto, they don't even know how to classify it. Some people classify, or IRS classifies crypto as property. The SEC is classifying it as a security, and the CFTC says it's an asset or a commodity, whatever. So we don't even have a definition according to our government of what is crypto. So that's problem one. Problem two, who's going to regulate it? Problem three, what are other nations doing? And problem four, you have problems like FTX, which was, I guess, for the lack of better words, the jury's still out on it, so I'm not going to speak in exactly what it is, but for the lack of better words, people are kind of calling it a Ponzi scheme. That's your decision, and I'm sure you'll be reading a lot more about that. But that actually happened with Mt. Gox about 10 years ago too, which is another exchange that went under. So people are buying, we're in the wild, wild west. There's no doubt about that. Professor Miller said that, and I couldn't agree more. And we are in the wild, wild west of crypto. Who's buying it? Where are you buying it? What are you transacting? And what's the future of it? We don't know. Right now, crypto is kind of being treated like a stock in the sense that you buy it, you're holding onto it, hoping for it to go up and selling it. But the future of crypto is supposed to be, we go to Starbucks and I pay with Bitcoin, or I pay with whatever. I don't know if you guys have seen the digital wallets. You can transfer money, and you can actually transfer, because I have my digital wallet address. It's nickguerra.wallet. That's, you don't need to send me money though, but you can literally transfer to those addresses that simply with crypto. By having your own identity, your name being your wallet, money can't come out of it. So this is gonna get even crazier as the time goes on, and the governments are worried. So regulators want to step in. They're fearful of what's happening with crypto. And let's talk about past attempts of regulation. So same thing, we're going to talk about Bitcoin. This asset was originally defined as virtual currency in the payment system by the US Treasury as early as 2013. It was then considered a commodity under the Commodities Exchange Act by the CFTC in 2014. If you look at your taxes, if you were filing last year and this year, for those of you who are going to pay your taxes under 1040, when you put your name and address and everything, there's a box under there that the government is tracking. And the box is very simple. Have you invested in digital currencies or virtual currencies or some sort? That's the question. It's on your 1040 tax form this year when you buy. If you lie, and they find out later, they're going to come for you for your taxes. Now, that's assuming the IRS catches you. Or the IRS is trying to data track on this, like who's actually investing in this stuff? My personal guess is they're trying to figure out who's in this game. And we'll soon find out why that question is on your taxes. So you'll see that on your 1040 form. But you can read right here too, the infrastructure bill passed. In 2021, an infrastructure bill passed by Congress treated Bitcoin as physical cash, mandating reporting transactions over $10,000. So if you guys can see here, Bitcoin just in the last 2 years has been classified as cash, property, assets, a criminal threat, a cyber threat, a national threat, an international threat, and the list is going to continue to go on, right? In 2022, what was it? 15 hearings alone happened on cryptocurrency. A lot of it kind of heightened because of FTX's collapse. There was over 50 bills introduced by Congress in 2022. But the most impactful bill, and Professor Abraham talked about Cynthia Lumens from Wyoming and Senator Christian Gillibrand from his home state of New York. They submitted landmark legislation aimed to provide specific solution to most of crypto's quagmires, such as differentiating a security token from a digital commodity and providing clear tax policies responsible for Financial Innovation Act of 2022. The problem is not all crypto is alike. Bitcoin is kind of treated like gold. Ethereum is kind of like, I would equivalent to oil in the sense like you need to have gas in order to turn on the lights and operate the whole ecosystem. Every cryptocurrency has its purpose. None of them are alike. They copy each other, sure. So the legislation is going to get even weirder in the sense like what type of crypto is going to get classified into what category. So that's definitely coming down the legal chain because not all crypto is alike. Coming back to Texas, let me give you an idea of how big Texas is. And my source on this is the TV show Lone Star Law, so I guess that's conclusive enough. But Texas is the size of California, New York, and Maine combined. Those are 3 pretty big states. So the beautiful part about Texas is we've got a lot of land, and mining operations are scalable in Texas. Now, we also have our own electric grid system, and as Professor Abraham talked about, it's kind of hitting its max point. Well, the purpose of what the Texas leaders want is to beef up our electric grid system so we can accommodate mining operations throughout the state of Texas. Ted Cruz in October 2022 said, "I would like to see Texas become the center of the universe for Bitcoin and crypto." Another benefit of crypto being mined in Texas, because it's so energy intensive, we've got some of the cheapest energy cost in the nation, right? And why is that? Well, places like Houston, Texas, which is the energy capital of the world, has the energy infrastructure and the abundance of energy to supply these mining operations. So Texas is uniquely positioned thanks to cities like Houston and what they're doing for Bitcoin mining operations. In terms of what to expect in 2023, well, the hope is that Congress and the White House will work together. Well, that's a hope, and we already know how hope works in politics. It takes time, it takes a lot of agony, and it takes a lot of infighting, but eventually I'm sure something will get done. But what's happened since the FTX collapse, the Sam Bankman-Fried, what was it, 6 months ago, plus or minus, that story is yet to be told, and it's being quiet right now, but when that court case starts here soon enough, it's gonna get interesting. And the biggest problem that a lot of politicians are under with that FTX case is FTX, when they were around, they gave a lot of money to politicians, both from Republicans and Democrats. So all of these politicians that took money from FTX have a lot of explaining to do as to why they were taking money from FTX when it turned out to be, quote unquote, a charged Ponzi scheme for now. President Biden also in 2022 signed an executive order on ensuring the responsible development of digital assets. That basically means, hey, let's get along, let's play along, and let's try to come up to some compromise to get this categorized correctly. The one part that's really true, and I'm going to end it for that, is the industry would really prefer a piece of legislation that sets the rules of the road, and that a mix of executive orders and random enforcement actions are not going to help the cryptocurrency industry. Right now, Professor Miller said the market cap on that's just under 600 billion. Well, about a year and a half ago, when the crypto market was at its highest, crypto market cost $3 trillion. $3 trillion. Guys, the gold market is 10 trillion. At this rate, the crypto market is going to outpace the gold market, my guess, 10 to 20 years, which is nothing in the grand scale of things. So it's going to grow. That's not my suggestion to buy or not buy. That's just kind of inevitable. But 2023 is going to be a big year in terms of setting the stage of what the legal enforcement is and what the regulatory enforcement is. Now, what happens after that, only time will tell, but I think there will be a time that will be fun soon. So thank you. And Heidi, there you go, Professor Green, thank you very much. We're happy to answer the questions if you have any.
Actually, yeah, before any formal closing remarks,
Yes.
I think that there are questions from the audience for the panelists. You may ask those questions, and the panelists, you may call on the audience members.
Sure. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, if they really want to control this all crypto situation, why, like, they can buy a lot of the countries that are their main and trying to figure out how it works, where they don't combine each other and try to figure out international more than just government by government.
Yeah. You guys want to just out? Okay, I'll take it. So it's a lot of international law. Other countries, I mean, they can't. Like, we have Interpol, we have international agencies like the United Nations and World Health Organizations and Interpol and all this stuff. They work together. But in order for that to happen, a lot of stuff I mean, United Nations came at the heels of World War I and stuff like that too. So I don't see that happening anytime soon because the laws of each of the nations are different. The problems that each of the nations are facing are different. And some are actually using cryptocurrency. Some, I mean, I'm not saying this as a matter of fact, so please don't take it that way. Because the Russian banking system is right now closed off from the world, right? Some are saying that the Russians are operating through cryptocurrency to be able to purchase or trade goods. And we don't know if that's true or not. Now that is a pretty strong legal basis for that. And that's why you can see since the Russian war started, cryptocurrency is now popping up to $30,000 for Bitcoin, but the market is not looking very good. So something's happening where the crypto market is being triggered. And if the governments start working together, we may be working with the foe and we may not even know that. So I think we have to figure the problem out internally before we work with other countries.
And let me just add also, it's really hard for governments to work together. I mean, why don't we have a world currency right now? Because if you have your own currency, you can print more dollars if you want to pay your bills, get into as much debt. And if you're all working together with another country, you have things you have to work with it. And come into an agreement with that is a challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys. One quick thing. The whole purpose of cryptocurrency was so it can't be manipulated. There's only 21 million Bitcoins. That's it. They're not growing more. Like dollars, we can go turn on the printing machine right now. We can print out more bills. The whole point of Bitcoin was to stop the government control and abuse of power and just keep it simple and stabilize where the people control it, not governments control it based off of whatever feelings they have to turn on their printers or turn off their printers. So in concept, cryptocurrency has a noble purpose, but I don't know if it's going to end out noble or not. That time will come.
So my question actually goes into something you just said. So recently, as you guys, as Professor Miller talked about, FedNow. It's a big concern for a lot of people on like two sides of the aisle, in my opinion. I know there's not a lot of knowledge about it, but I think it's kind of like, I don't know if this is a question, like, do you think it's like the start of like a war kind of thing within the Federal Reserve with the CTFC? Because when you look at it, it's programmable. And when something's programmable, it can be exploited.
Yep.
And the way that they're changing it for people that don't know is like, when you buy something now, like say Amazon, it leaves my account, goes to Amazon. Well, now with FedNow, it's like a funnel, right?
Right.
And it goes from your bank account to FedNow. You can either say yes or no. If they say yes, it goes. But if they say no, it comes back. To me, that's kind of a concern because if they're wanting us to go digital, and the whole idea, as you said, was like for Bitcoin to be like a way for us to control what we do. How do you stop that? Because I feel like no matter what we do, there's going to be some form of control. So I don't know.
I gotta say one thing about FedNow, please. If you notice, last year the federal government changed the rule where even on Zelle, Apple Pay, whatever, any transaction over $600 has to be reported.
Yeah.
So the federal government basically saying, hey, we're not getting our taxes. So the purpose of FedNow is also to kind of track who's transferring money so they can kind of take their piece on it too. I'm sure they may have different opinions than I do. That's just my opinion. But I definitely think the federal government's involvement is also for tax collection purposes and how they can make their tax purposes.
See, my question too on top of that is like, how is that fair? Because like to have it programmable means you're going from where we have a freedom to spend our money how we want to spend it to a totalitarian style of leadership where they can say you can't buy anything because we told you so.
Yeah.
Like say we get another pandemic. I'm not an essential worker, but say my mom gets cancer and I want to go travel to go see her, but they said you can't leave. They can block payments on gas, on buying food, I just don't, that's why I don't like, I'm kind of scared about joining in on cryptocurrency because I feel like I can put all my money in and then they can just hold it from me. And to me, that's not right. Because if I work for my money, why should I trust you with it? That's why I don't know. So for someone like that, what is like the thought process like that I don't know how to ask the question, but like, what is the way to kind of use like my concerns about that, if there is any? Because it's like,
I have a personal answer, not an educated answer.
yeah.
the answer is that it's not going to stop. Because the fear of terrorism and the fear of, well, not since the Patriot Act came in 2001, right? Those civil liability, civil protections have been constantly intruded upon. Now you can't even go buy a car with more than 10, if you have more than $10,000, you have to report where you got that cash from, right? You can't buy property with cash. You can't buy a car with cash. I mean, you can go to dinner, you can go do some basic stuff, but really, truly, after a while, we're not going to be a cash-oriented society, and the U.S. is coming up with a digital dollar, and they're going to track everything. You know, so it's maybe not the answer that you want, but I really would love for them to answer this too, because they could definitely get some happy to stay on the call.
Just very quickly, just one thing, one thing that we see in China, actually in China with the Digi-Yuan experiment, the money actually expires. So what they will often do if they want to quickly pump cash into the economy, they'll say that the money in your Digi-Yuan wallet is going to expire by the end of this month. And so you are forced to spend it, otherwise you lose it. And so that's another way, or if we're talking about manipulation, right? That's another way for the government to kind of manipulate the market and the larger economy with just having control of the digital wallet.
I agree with what they said, so I mean, I can add to it, but yeah, I mean, it's definitely a concern for control.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, this might be a little off topic, but like which platforms do you recommend buying and selling cryptocurrency? I know we have like FTX, Coinbase and all that. Like,
So Coinbase is technically, so that's a great question. FTX was the darling of all crypto regulation, and they gave a lot of money to
yeah,
politicians.
because I know some of them like charge a lot of fees.
Yeah, and if I had to give it in terms of who's been the second best, because these guys are actually writing crypto legislation. They're taking crypto bills and saying, hey, Congressman, Gino, we want you to present this. By the way, we also gave you $1 million toward your PAC, so you better present this. And that's going to be Coinbase. That's just because they have really infiltrated themselves very well, for now at least, with government leaders. But the big demon in the room, guys, in finance, which is the biggest global exchange in the world, there's strong rumblings that they also have their books not in order. I don't know if that's true. Tether, you talked about Tether. That's another one that's strongly accused of not having their books in order, which basically means that for every crypto dollar that they're holding, for every cryptocurrency that they're holding, are the dollars matching? And there's strong rumblings that these organizations are not, and one of them is likely to fail as well. So the answer to that is I don't know, but if I had to guess right now, I would say Coinbase. Can you say anything else? No. Coinbase is protected. They do have insurance. If they do get hacked, they will pay you back for everything. So I guess if you want to take solace in that, but that's not me advertising or recommending anything. You asked a question, I'm going to give you the best answer I know.
I have an online question.
Yes.
I don't know what most of these words mean. So you can see it on the screen if you guys want to look at it. What are your thoughts on, is it DY or I don't know, DY projects on Helium? Is it Denmo? I'm not sure. Hive Mapper, where they are trying to implement utility with cryptocurrency.
I can't even see the question. Can you repeat it? I'm sorry.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on DY? So it's DEWI projects on Helium.
Okay.
And then Denmo, all caps DIMO, and Hive Mapper, where they're trying to implement utility with cryptocurrency.
Next question.
Okay. We have another one. Could you shed light to hot and cold wallets for user interested in acquiring crypto assets?
Yes, that's a great question. If anybody wants to take that one.
I mean, it's just my understanding, like, you can have crypto where it's in Coinbase, which is an exchange, or you can actually have it on a flash drive where it's not accessible for anyone, I mean, other than having it on that drive. because you have your key, the keys are basically located on the drive. And so there's been, stories where you see like, hey, so-and-so's hiding millions of dollars worth of crypto on these flash drives. I think that's what they're talking about with the cold.
Yeah. So the hot wallets are basically, each one of these exchanges have these protected, cyber protected, whatever, firewalls and everything that you can leave it on their servers. Or you can put it on a cold wallet, right, transferring it to your cold wallet, and it's not connected. It's literally in your pocket or in your drawer, your bank account, whatever. The way to access cold wallets is it's a 24-word password that comes with each one of those wallets. Like the password could be like grass, milk, computer, brown, fire. It will come with its own password, and you have to save that password with your life. Because if you lose that password, I mean, there are recovery ways, but it's really, really difficult to do that. So cold wallet is basically, they say there's a saying in crypto now, not your keys, not your crypto, meaning if you don't own the crypto in your wallet, you don't really own it. Because if you're leaving it on a hot wallet or leaving it on the servers, somebody can hack it. And Mt. Gox people just started getting paid 11 years later. Literally, 11 years later, they just started getting paid. So are you gonna wait 10 years to recoup your money if you get it hacked or whatever? I mean, now it probably won't take 10 years, but just think about that. So if you're gonna keep crypto, I think this is a suggestion I would personally give is yes, keep it in a cold wallet if that. Oh, yes, sir.
So thank you for coming to Village Square.
Thank you.
One of the topics was going to be the recession, so I wish you could address the recession part of the recession and the crypto chaos. And also tell us how much what you own, if you own any of this. I had a couple of comments. One of the things that you talked about was Signature Bank, Barney Frank, and one of the reasons that failed was crypto. So, and then Peter Thiel, he's the boogeyman. He's in crypto, and he doesn't really like the banking system, so he pretty much brought down Silicon Bank because there's apps now where you can keep your money. So that's an issue. And then Marlene was talking about legislature. Well, they're also working on crypto legislature right now, and that's a big thing.
Yep.
And I think Professor Abraham, you mentioned the Riot blockchain. Well, they asked them to shut down in July because they were sucking up all the electricity and we didn't want to get all hot and bothered. So Riot blockchain shut down $9.5 billion because they are a threat to our grid. They do suck up a lot. There is an idea of using flare gas, sell the flare gas in Texas. There's an idea of using that for crypto money. And there's a lot more stuff, but basically the recession and what do you own?
Well, so the idea of a recession, I mean, is the recession going to be caused by cryptocurrency? None of us can really say that for sure. But yeah, I mean, when it comes to something like someone like Peter Thiel and his influence in the crypto industry, he after a lot of this started, kind of going back a little bit into history. A lot of this started. This whole industry started in the wake of the 2007-2008 banking collapse, and there was this argument that people like Peter Thiel were trying to advance that the reason that banking collapse, the housing collapse happened was because of excessive regulation, not because of the opposite, not because of a lack of regulation. And it was something that benefited somebody in his, I guess, somebody with his wealth and his resources. And he was trying to push that to a great deal. And one thing that makes connecting, people like Peter Thiel and Elon Musk and other people that are very prominent with crypto. One reason that cryptocurrency is so speculative here, where there's actual applications elsewhere, is because we have a lot of very wealthy people in the US that are hoarding a great deal of these crypto assets. And they, it's what their real goal is they want more and more people to buy in, to raise the value of what they're holding. And then they sell when the price is very high. And so that's one of the reasons. Is that the only reason? I wouldn't say so, but that's one of the reasons why cryptocurrency in the US remains a very speculative asset, something that you can't really do much. because we have very wealthy people that are hoarding so much. And they are hoping to get more and more people like kind of onto that bandwagon. I'm sorry, I know you asked a lot, but.
In terms of what we own, my bosses are here, so I don't. But I have that within Bitcoin, Ethereum, Cardano, Cadena. The ones that I picked specifically have the utilitarian purpose of fast transactions. I believe Cadena, which is founded by former JP Morgan Chase and SEC people, that can do, I think, what was it, 40,000 transactions a second, whereas MasterCard can only do, I believe, 3,800 transactions a second. So when I look at crypto, I don't look at what's cool or what Shiba Inu like or what's this like. I look at future utilitarian purposes of am I going to use this in 10 years to make transactions happen? Bitcoin, I look at just like gold. You buy gold and you just leave it and let it sit. That's how I look at it. But more importantly, my vetting process is who's the team behind it. Now, if the crypto is coming from certain countries that I'm questionable about, I generally don't. But if it's teams that are based in the US with lots of white paper, lots of science, lots of data, and I think the shining star of that crypto would probably be Cardano, because it's Charles Hoskinson from Colorado. He's a mathematician, scientist, and they do probably the best scientific research. And that's backed, and that's what I feel comfortable when I look into crypto. At this moment, I do not own any crypto because I'm waiting for a future crash, and I could be wrong, so it's not buying or selling advice, of course. But yeah, I'm uncertain, and there's people like he just said that are hoarding. I'm not hoarding because I'm not in that financial position, but I'm ready when the time comes.
I can answer his question about the electrical grid.
Sure, yeah.
With the 3 generators that do pull down substantial amount of electrical power, they move to Texas because electricity is cheap from other areas. But there is a gentleman's agreement, just as a conversation that the governor has, that when we get into critical stages where the grid is unstable, he requests that they go offline. So I'm hoping that we don't have a power surge this summer so that they don't go offline, but it does make our grid unstable. If we really want to, but they're working on stability in the legislature. That's not one of the issues they're addressing though.
Yes, sir.
First of all, I thank the gentleman in the back for asking some scary questions, which give me a lot more confidence to ask my own scary questions. Second of all, I'd like to get out of the way that I made a significant amount of money off of crack points early during all of this going on. And I am now somebody who is kind of against crypto because I think having a technology based on the blockchain, which is basically a permanent ledger that won't go away until we get hit over a large solar flare, is a very scary thing to have, and a very scary thing to give to banks, the government, and everything else that we keep track of people, especially more vulnerable people, and especially people of color as well, who already tend to have more of an eye on them than other people. I would like to say that I am actually personal friends with the CIO of Winston, Ashton Harris. And I do know that during the Texas freeze and other blackouts during moments in which there was a lot of heat, they actually sold to the electricity back to the people around them, which I'm not going to get into my moral concerns for things like that, but that is something that they are doing. They do sell some of that electricity back and stuff like that happens. I also want to mention that I have a bit of a question as to why they would put a like an expiration date on this money. It seems kind of like doubling up on expirations because inflation is already an expiration of your money in itself. So when you tell these people, get rid of this money fast, and their money's already depreciating, the one that they already had beforehand, how is that really helping them aside from, maybe just potentially throwing more things at them that will eventually not have any value to them?
Yeah, well, this one. Well, I mean, in China, I guess the idea was that you quickly pump money into the economy, and if in a period of recession or in a period of slow growth, that you force people to spend. And so the idea is that you have to take the money out of your digital wallet and you have to spend it on some consumer good. You can't hoard it in the bank. You can't hoard it in your wallet. You just have to spend it.
Are you able to put it into like a stock or something, so you're
No,
able to
it would-
actually save?
No, you would have to spend it, right, on some consumer, good, right, or some piece of equipment. But remember, this is also the example that I was giving, this was back when this was a experiment in that one province. Now it's expanded, and now it's much more, buy groceries, go to dinner with all of this, you can do your traditional tasks. But the first example I was giving, where they were experimenting with things like expiration dates and all of that, it was very limited. It was kind of like a pilot program. But now it's expanded, and now almost 300 million people use it. So I think the point was, yes, inflation is a much more longer term process. This was just to try and get money into the economy as quickly as possible.
And I have another question. Do you think there is any way to kind of remediate the sort of bad perception that certain people have of cryptocurrency here in America after being burnt by losing money on very volatile coins? And also just and this is my own personal opinion, complete embarrassment of people trading pictures of monkeys that lost about 96% of their worth.
Yeah, I mean,
Is there any way to like make Bitcoin hype again?
I would say, other than the state, to make it a safe investment, I don't think you would, it's not gonna be hyping. I don't think so. I think, but to make it a safe investment, we're looking at probably the government-backed currency.
So make it more.
Yeah, make it more,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, the reason it has value is because somebody says it has value.
exactly.
If tomorrow nobody wanted Bitcoin, it would go down to zero. I mean, that's it, and so, if the government steps in and gives it some value, then that could create some value, but otherwise, it's very speculative, we don't know.
You did bring up one very good point, and I commend you for that, because my personal opinion, 90% of people probably don't know this. People think, oh, when you're operating in a crypto, you can't be tracked. You absolutely can be tracked. Like, banks have inadvertently done more for terrorism activities than crypto has done as of yet. Now, that number could change by any moment. Deutsche Bank accidentally funded Toyota trucks for I think it was Al-Qaeda, if I'm not mistaken, right? That's a failure in the banking system, right? If the wrong people are getting brand new trucks and weapons and whatnot too. So the banking system is not absolved of these international crimes as well too. But the notion that I hear all the time where, oh, crypto is just, you can fly by night and you just get away with anything, that's not true. Now, who's gonna enforce all these punishments and knowing the person that's buying the crypto, that's still TBD. But I do commend you for saying that, because that shows, you're educated on this topic, and I like hearing that, so thank you for that. Sure, we have two, Heidi, Professor Green,
This
sorry.
is a really stupid question. This presentation and the words being used are well above my knowledge level. Well, one of the things that he said that I want to know, any of my students in my class know that I'm technologically challenged. I'm the one that still likes to write checks or use cash, and I'm not into all of this stuff. But I do have a cash out just recently. And one of the things you said, and I want to know, okay, you said anything over $600?
$600, yeah, it's tracked by the government now.
Okay, so if my husband cash outs me,
$600.
okay, which he has not,
Yeah.
not to that amount.
Yeah.
It's only like $60, $50,
Yeah.
$100 something, but if one transaction.
Over $600 is tracked.
Is tracked, or I have to report, I have to report that.
So let me just say from the accounting perspective, so like if you send somebody money, there's like friends and family is one option, or there's like as if you're a business.
Oh,
If you send
okay.
friends and family, they may be tracking it, but they're not sending a report to the IRS.
Okay.
If you're doing it as a business,
Yeah, you definitely.
hold on, if you're doing that as a business, there's now a form that's gonna go to the IRS, you're gonna get a copy, and you need to put that on your tax.
Okay, yeah, I'm not in that camp.
Yeah, and so, yeah, that's what's happening, is they want people to report, their, what's the name of it, you know, if you're an Uber driver, they want you to report that now, and they're gonna start doing that
I
through
see.
these tax forms.
Okay, because when you were talking about the change in the 1040 and the box and.
Look, I agree with what he's saying, but what if they don't, what if they accuse me of, you know, like, if him and I are doing a deal, I mean, they can technically, I guess, you know, if they really want to, if they question a transaction, I don't think they're gonna question one transaction, but they can question an absorbent amount of transactions if they wanted to. But the point that I was trying to make was, $600 is not a lot of money today, guys. So that's basically, and the government came up with that arbitrary number, which could change even further tomorrow. They could come to a point where they're tracking every transaction, right? So what my point is that the government is watching, and they're watching specifically for, you know, wrongdoing or bad activity, that's one, and they're watching out for their tax money. That's two. The IRS is hiring 33,000 people. Yeah, 33,000 people this year, because let's remember, we're $40 trillion in the hole, and that number is not going away anytime soon. So the IRS needs its money, and they're gonna come up with any possible way to come up with it. And the tax rates, once they start enforcing crypto stuff, my guess is 40%. And I'm happy to hear if they have anything else to say on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
So my question, since you guys are government, is the Constitution and currency. But I want to make two comments first. One, yeah, currency is fake. Doonesbury, when Texas was going to succeed in the United States, Doonesbury would joke, well, what are we going to use for currency? Aggie. So how many people would have confidence in our Aggie and do it? So it is a faith-based system. And last week, when Trump was arrested, if you read the indictment, there's a lot of, there's two shell companies in there. So shell companies are a big deal for hiding money and maybe a big deal for hiding crypto too. But in Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution, it says gold and silver for our debts. So what's going on?
Silver for
our debts.
Debts, got it.
Yes, debts. So what's going on in the Constitution that they said that we pay gold and silver? My take is that states had their own currency.
Yeah.
And they were doing their own thing.
Yeah.
Sort of like this.
That was a Maryland Supreme Court case, Murdoch v. Maryland, I think, with the US government said that you can't have a currency that supersedes the US government, the national currency. I think that's part of the supremacy clause of the 10th Amendment. That's one. But I think that gold and silver thing is kind of outdated because we're not on the gold standard since what, 1971, like 70? Yeah, 70, 71. So I think that's just probably.
You how the Supreme Court ruled on Roe versus Wade. They could easily say this about in the Constitution.
Yeah,
Go back.
but let's get, well, that's 100% true, but let's get to the let's first of all get to the Supreme Court. That's one, because getting to the Supreme Court, that's a what, $30 to $100 million battle, bare minimum. And that also, that if you're gonna convince justices who are in their 80s right now on average, that they're gonna even hear this case. So until then, I think they're just gonna be loosey-goosey until you finally get it into the courts. But my personal opinion is I don't see this going to the courts, the Supreme Court anytime soon. Again, that's just a legal personal opinion. It happened tomorrow. I don't see this court doing it. It could be a younger, more radical court that probably do it in the future.
Well, there's a conspiracy theory that you have to do this, and so you're probably this.
That's fair. And until there's no law, it's the wild, wild west. Now, whether that law is going to come from the Supreme Court, the Congress, or whatever, time will tell. My personal opinion, and I'm happily, if they disagree with me, that's fine. My personal opinion, I think it's going to get worse before it gets better.
And speaking about back to gold and silver, I've been reading that there are some, like BRICS is a group of countries that are talking about developing a currency that is backed by gold or hard or silver or some or a metal. And so, you know, to upset, you know, to compete with the dollar. And so I think if you're going to come up with something that's going to compete with the dollar, it probably should be backed by something to give it some legitimacy. You know, so I can see that happening in another country.
I think I could see it happening with South America and lithium.
South American.
And lithium.
Oh, lithium.
Countries.
One more question in the back, and then I think that's all we have time for.
Yes.
So if all these crypto companies don't have their books lined, how come the US government added
figured it out. Like they cited it, but how come we don't know? It's,
Yeah. Well,
Some of it is plausible
yeah,
deniability.
exactly.
In some sense, because, well, to be honest, right, if I loan Nick $10,000, right, or if I tell Nick, you know what, I have a great business opportunity, I need $10,000, right? And if I just run away with the money, that's a crime. Whether I do that in person or digitally, right, it's a crime. But because this is a new environment, a lot of times regulators are very slow to pick up on it. And so that's why you're not seeing like a 5-alarm fire, like, oh, we have to check the books of finance, we have to check the books of this, that exchange. So because this is so new for so many people, that's why we're not seeing the federal regulators act as quickly as they should. And so I think a lot of it is because of novelty, and a lot of it is because they just are not really that familiar with this new environment.
I mean, the other thing is that the government has to have probable cause to come after you as well too. If nothing's being reported, then they can't just come up and say, come to your door and say, yeah, we're here to audit your books. Like, it's kind of like criminal law too. They have to have justifications, reports, you know, very good basis to be at your door, because guys, I mean, we can be victims, but remember, the people that you put under trial, they have rights too. And these companies, as time goes on, are showing that they have sometimes more rights than individuals do. So if I was your lawyer, I would say, you know, why, who, what are you here? I would challenge everything possible with my client, and most likely I'll win. Any other questions?
Are there any final questions? Yes.
I'm just curious as to why Texas wants to be a leader in Bitcoin. I'm kind of the person that follows the money. So what profit motive would Texas have in doing so? Are they going to charge for every transaction? Do you have any idea what kind of money revenue Texas would make off of this type of endeavor?
We have so much land that we can use. I mean, if it's just land that's sitting there, because I actually read another statistic that the whole world can fit into Texas with every 5 people getting a quarter acre of land to share. Now, I don't know if that statistic is 100% true, but I'm just trying to put it into perspective of how big Texas is. And when there's a lot of dead areas that don't have population, or rural areas that want more job and more income opportunities, well, the mining operations gives those people that opportunity to do that, to earn income. And while they're earning income, Texas is taxing that income, you know? So at the end of the day, people like Ted Cruz and Abbott, Governor Abbott, don't wake up in the morning, you know, just thinking about crypto, though there's a purpose to making money on it. And that's what it is, the money making game, because we have the infrastructure in terms of the grid and land and people that are smart enough to do this stuff.
So it's employment and getting taxes.
It's good economic development for everybody. But again, that's what they say. I have my personal different opinions about that.
There are some bills that are in there, specifically in the legislature, specifically considered challenge bills. If they pass, they know they will be contested and they'll take them all through the court system. So that's one issue, that it's looking down the road to make those changes we're talking about if the Supreme Court rules. The other issue is Texas has a lot of area that does not have broadband.
Yep.
And if they put a cryptocurrency location there, they help build the infrastructure.
That's absolutely correct.
It's, you know, it's this juggling act.
By the way, Texas just recently became the biggest exporter of technology now out of any of the states. It used to be California, but now Texas exports the most technology out of any of the 50 states. So this is only going to add to the coffers of Texas's case.
All right, I just want to take a few moments to conclude the discussion today. I want to first thank Professors Guerra, Abraham, and Miller for presenting this topic to all of you today. So I think they deserve a round of applause. For their presentation. For those of you who are still remaining in the audience, please remember, if you are here on behalf of a professor or a particular class, to sign in on the sign-in sheet on the table next to the refreshments, I just want to make note of the flyers that are on the back table related to the Political Science Club, to the Introduction to Political Science course, and the fabulous reading list that the librarians put together over this very topic. So if you are interested in learning more about cryptocurrency or the things discussed today, there is a reading list. And then obviously, please feel free to take whatever refreshments are left as you exit and head home or go to another class. But thank you for attending.